for myself, okay, I'm thinking, I really admired President Trump's energy. When he got into office, he was just really a mentor. I mean, not personally, but I attended many of his conferences, many of his rallies, and the guy just had a nonstop energy, kind of a Energizer bunny, battery bunny, and he just kept going and going. Excuse me. So I'm thinking to myself, what about him could I possibly emulate? Because he turned on a lot of people, got a lot of people excited, and still does. Sure. Including me. And I'm thinking, and you, what does Trump have that no other candidate had? Trump wine. So I went online, and I'm thinking, I wonder, could there be? And there was. Beran wine.
Oh, so you designed that?
This is not me. It's just not me.
There?
It's even more incredible. The Beran Vineyard in Sonoma, California, in the Napa Valley, burnt down 2 years ago by wildfires.
Okay.
This is the remaining bottles left. They sell for $50 a bottle. It's an award-winning wine. And I bought 4 cases. This is the most I can get from them. They had to round them up, pull them back from their distributors.
They're not producing it anymore?
No, the vineyards are gone. And Beran wine.
That's so cool.
I'm offering those cases, one bottle, to anyone who donates $1,000 or more to my campaign.
Okay.
So, but not to diminish smaller amounts. I mean, if you can't afford $1,000, I completely understand that. So instead, I'll give you Good News Bear.
Good News Bear.
It was a consultant asked me, so who's your campaign manager? And I said,
Myself?
What? God is.
Oh.
God is. He called me to serve. He brought me the Beran wine. He even threw me the Beran Island. I mean, where, who can come up with this stuff, It has to be divine. So God's my campaign manager.
Wow. 엠킴TV 구독자 시청자 여러분 안녕하세요. 오늘은 제 옆에 굉장히 스페셜한 분을 모셨습니다. 귀여워 보이시지만 굉장히 대단한 분이세요. 퍼 베런이라고 하는 버지니아 패어팩스 카운티에서 아주 중요한 일을 앞으로 하실 분입니다. 그래서 오늘 어떤 일을 하실 건지 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Well, I'm Paul Beran. I'm running for supervisor, Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County. The county is divided into 9 districts. My district is Franconia, which is where we're sitting right now.
Franconia.
Yeah.
Those that don't really know what Board of Supervisors do exactly, could you please explain a little bit about it?
Don't worry, because I didn't either. Until the GOP asked me to run for the state, I said, so what actually does a supervisor do? Well, it's a dual purpose role, and it's actually pretty cool because you are the mayor, I'm using my own term, the mayor of the district, okay? Which means you oversee the police department, the fire department, the parks and recreation, the streets, the taxes, everything having to do with your district, okay? Crime, everything. But then also, because you are on the board of supervisors, you and your other fellow supervisors run the county of Fairfax. So you're getting a 2-for-1.
Okay, so it's like city council for big cities, and
it's the county council, if
county
you will,
council,
and the mayor of your own district. So it's a combined role.
So I heard you ran an ad company for a long time, and tell me a little bit about your background.
Sure. I started as a radio disc jockey in my teenage years in Pittsburgh, and that was 50 years ago.
In Pittsburgh,
and
Pennsylvania.
From there, I opened my own ad agency some years later, and I had been running it really up until my retirement, which was just a couple years ago.
So could you tell me a little bit about your campaign?
Well, when we moved here, we have a beautiful home, nice big backyard. I said to my wife, we have to have a party. I mean, this is just made for a party. So we did. After COVID-19 restrictions were lifted, we invited neighbors who wanted to see what we did back here. And we had about 100 people for that.
Wow.
And one of the guests asked me in advance, would you mind if I bring a political candidate who would like to meet some of your friends and neighbors? I said, sure. And that thus began a series of meet and greets that we had here in our house over the last 2 years. That gave the GOP, the Republican Party, a chance to get to know me as the host of these meet and greets. So when we got closer to the election of the supervisors, they called me and said, Paul, we need you. And I said, you need another party? And she said, well, you'll probably want to have one or two of those too, but we need you to run. I said, what? I'd rather be a kingmaker than a king. I had no plans to do that. I'm retired, you know. I'm enjoying my relaxing days. But she went on to explain to me, as I asked, you know, give me a good reason why I'd want to come out of retirement to do that. And she said, well, the guy that's in there is in there. He got there unopposed. There was no one that ran against him, so he got in easy. It didn't matter.
Wow.
And he hasn't done anything in this one term to justify keeping him there.
Sure.
In fact, if anything, he's been really voting against the current constituency, the people who live here. All of his, rulings, all of his policies were against people that live here, that voted him in. It didn't make any sense. And she says, and we have to get him out. So please don't let him get reelected unopposed, because you're the only one we have in Franconia. And I said, well, let me ask my higher power. Lynn, my wife.
Of course.
I said, GOP wants me to run. She said, no, absolutely not. I don't support that. She says, you just, it takes too much money and too much time, and you don't have the kind of energy. And what makes you think you could win in this highly democratic, area?
True.
And I said, well, dear, if I would accept their invitation to run, it wouldn't necessarily be to win. I mean, I want to win, mind you, but if I am given an audience and a microphone and a pulpit, and I have a chance to tell the people here what I have come to know about politics, and particularly the Democratic Party, I'll open a few eyes. I'll turn a few heads and maybe even hearts as a result, and I'll consider that a win. And if I can win in that regard, then I've done good. And she says, well, if you put it that way, still no. My wife and I run a Bible study every Thursday night here out of our home. And we're Christians. We love the Lord. He's our Savior, and my irrigation system just came on. I should have turned it off. My prayer was to the Lord, asked him his wisdom. What should I do? Show me a sign, what you want me to do.
Sure.
Well, as my wife and I were going to bed that night, she says quietly, with her sheet up over her nose, which is how she normally sleeps, how can you even think of running? You can't even walk. Now, you have to know what I do with my cane that's inside. For 2 years, I have had spurs growing in the back of my heels. And with every step I would take, I'd get pain up through my leg and into my back, just because of the pressure against the nerve of the bone spur. And I asked the doctor what I could do about that, and he said, well, we can cut open your leg and detach the nerves and grind down the bone and then reattach the nerves with super glue, medical super glue. Put your foot in a cast, and your foot would be like this. I'd be walking like a ballerina for 6 months and hope that they don't grow back. And I said, what's the plan B? I was not happy with that whole scenario and didn't want to do it. And he says, well, you could live with the pain for about 4 years.
Wow.
And in many cases, your body will adjust, the nerves will grow around the bone, and you'll be fine after 4 years of, agony.
Sure.
Well, it had been 2 years already, and I've been walking. So the next morning, I have an RV, a recreational vehicle, and we had an appointment to get some service done on it in Manassas, which is an hour and a half drive away. So I had my coffee cup and my cane in hand, and I said, honey, I'll see you in a few hours, So I drove to Manassas with the RV, sat in the waiting room while they were working on it, and they came back out about 2 hours later and jingling the keys. I had fallen asleep, in the waiting room. And they said, Mr. Beran, your RV's done, Mr. Beran. And I said, oh, okay. And I got up. I'm not a camera now, right? And I took a step, and took another step. I go, whoa, no pain. Jumped up and down, no pain. I'm thinking, I can't believe this. And just then I remembered that the pastor at our church had this was a Monday.
Okay.
On Sunday, the day before, the pastor had just in his sermon talked about the day when St. Peter had cured the lame at the city gates in Jerusalem. And the lame guy who had never been able to walk, who people would carry and set him down in the morning and pick him up and take him home every day, he was able to get up and jump around in jubilation. It was dancing in the courtyard. And I'm thinking, that was me. That really was me. I thought, wow, what the Lord had just done for me. So I came home, honey, I have something to show you. And I jumped up and down for her in the camera. And to her surprise, she says, oh my God, you have to run. And that's why I'm running. So I am. And that was only the first of really many things that happened over the next 2 weeks to affirm that the Lord really wanted me to run.
Wow.
And one of them I have to show you. Well, first of all, my slogan was beran, good news. Okay? And I actually came up with that slogan 2 years prior. Because when we moved here, I ran for HOA board. I discovered later that it didn't matter how much advertising or campaigning I did for that, because the president of the board picks the winners anyway. So it was worthless. I had the slogan, I had the logo, I thought, I'll just use that for my campaign to run for supervisor.
Sure.
But it didn't occur to me until I'm writing the script for my speech, for my acceptance speech, for the nomination, and I'm thinking, good news is the definition of gospel.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, I never even thought of that. I've known that all my life, but it just didn't connect until that moment. Then I realized, okay, Lord, you healed my feet. You want me to run. I get it. You want me to spread your good news.
Oh.
So now what do you want me to say? So as I continue to write the speech, I'm thinking, we need leadership with common sense. Yeah. No, that's not strong enough. We need leadership with conscience. That's the word.
Yes.
Don't you know that following Sunday in the pastor's sermon, it's all about conscience. Every other sentence, conscience, 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 conscience. And as part of the Bible study, we get a transcript of the pastor's sermon. So I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, wow, there's conscience everywhere. So I get it, Lord. You want me to run, you want me to spread your good news, and you want me to talk about conscience, because our leaders don't have any. They just don't, or they don't use it. Okay, God gives you conscience, but it's up to your choice to use it.
That's right.
And the little angel on the side, don't do that, and, that's their reaction. So they choose the wrong thing. They follow really an evil path. Yes. I mean, what they're doing to kids, indoctrinating them into pornographic, and just so irresponsible and evil. It's terrible. I told you I was a disc jockey at an early age. I had a good voice. Okay, that's what. So politicians in Pittsburgh came to like me. They saw me, they heard me. They said, Paul, we want you to be our spokesperson. Oh. And I became the spokesman for the Democratic Committee of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh. Okay. And I was that for about 10 years. I emceed all their polling nights. We didn't have, live screen TV. We had marker boards. We'd put the totals on, and I would be the one to announce, what the totals as the polls were coming in. And I emceed all their parties and events, and I was their media liaison, and it was a fun time. And I really enjoyed working with those people. They were good people. But it's not the same party anymore. In 2012, I switched in 2012 to Republican, but here's why. In 1983 is when I left my job. I said, I'm out of here.
You mean the Democratic Party job?
They came to me, and this is, Paul, this is what the National Committee is telling us to do locally, and we need you to know. We want to move, now this is 1983 now, we want to move this nation into more of a socialist country. And I said, and how do you propose to do that? Well, first of all, it's in two phases. Number one is we have to indoctrinate the children. We have to start at a young age, preschool, all the way through college. It'll take 30 years to do that. It actually took 40. And I said, how are you going to do that? Well, we'll use our money to influence the school boards. We'll replace a lot of the candidates with our people. We'll plant them in there, and they'll follow what we tell them to do. And we'll also infiltrate the teachers' unions and give them money so that they become reliant on our money, and therefore they'll do our bidding as well. We'll get them to drop American history, which they did, in favor of world history, which tends to favor more socialism than capitalism.
Yes.
And so our kids over time will come to believe that socialism is a much better way of life than
Did they
democracy.
actually say?
Now, I didn't change parties right away because I figured, well, maybe I can vote some of them out who are in the party and just try to influence in my own indirect way. But that didn't work. By 2012, I said, this craziness has got to end. It's not my party anymore. I'm out of here. I changed to Republican. 3 months later, I get invited to join Obama's White House Business Council. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a prank, okay? I did, and the following week I was in the White House. And I actually was honored. I accepted their invitation. And I figured, you know what? You keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yes.
I didn't vote for the man. I didn't like him. I even thought, and I kind of joked around saying that if he is ever elected, he'll turn us into an abomination. Abomination. Which he did and is still. And but I figured, if I'm inside, just like my philosophy with the HOA, if I'm inside, maybe I'll have some effect.
Sure.
And I was the thorn in their side. I really was.
They found out.
They didn't like me because everything I said was contrary to what they wanted to do. I gave them a headache with regard to Obamacare because that's when he was developing it. And so I didn't stay in long, but I was still honored to be asked. I was interviewed by a gentleman in Obama's cabinet, and he knew too much about me.
Wow.
He knew all about my involvement in the Democratic Party. He knew my business. He knew everything about me. He knew my family. And I even asked him, how is it that you know this much about me? I mean, I'm honored. I can't believe it, but how much? He said, I'm the Chief Information Officer of the United States. It's my job to know.
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's cool. Until I realized he didn't want to know me. He wanted to know what I knew. He wanted to know what I heard and assess what kind of danger I might be. I honestly believe that. I was still honored, to serve my country. And to this day, I don't regret that at all.
Sure.
I really don't. So that's part of my credentials. I was on the White House Business Council. And 2000. These are the things that help prepare me to be supervisor. I'm compassionate. I listen. I help. I want to help. I'm there for the people, and I have a good conscience, given by God, and I'm guided by His Spirit, His Holy Spirit. So that's, and I also know business. I've dealt with businesses,
which is important.
Corporate executives all day long for 40 years.
Right.
And I keep them happy. I help support their cause, their company, their employees, their customers. I help them develop their business, and advertising, that's what you do in PR. So you listen to the customer's needs, you address them, and you respond to them, and that's what I do. That's what I've always enjoyed doing, finding solutions to problems.
Wow.
And for myself, okay, I'm thinking, I really admired President Trump's energy. When he got into office, he was just really a mentor. I mean, not personally, but I attended many of his conferences, many of his rallies, and the guy just had a nonstop energy, a kind of a energizer bunny, battery bunny, and he just kept going and going. Excuse me. So I'm thinking to myself, what about him could I possibly emulate? Because he turned on a lot of people, got a lot of people excited, and still does.
Sure.
Including me. And I'm thinking, and you, what does Trump have that no other candidate had? Trump wine. So I went online, and I'm thinking, I wonder, could there be? And there was. Beran wine.
Oh, so you designed that?
This is not me. It's just not me.
There?
It's even more incredible. The Beran Vineyard in Sonoma, California, in the Napa Valley, burnt down 2 years ago by the wildfires.
Okay.
This is the remaining bottles left. They sell for $50 a bottle. It's an award-winning wine. And I bought 4 cases. This is the most I can get from them. They had to round them up, pull them back from their distributor.
They're not producing it anymore?
No, the vineyards are gone. And beran wine.
That's so cool.
I'm offering that those cases, one bottle, to anyone who donates $1,000 or more to my campaign.
Okay.
But not to diminish smaller amounts. I mean, if you can't afford $1,000, I completely understand that. So instead, I'll give you Good News Bear.
Good News Bear.
You know, it was, a consultant asked me, so who's your campaign manager? And I said, you know
Myself?
what? God is.
Oh.
God is. He called me to serve. He brought me the beran wine. He even threw me the beran island. I mean, where, who can come up with this stuff, It has to be divine. So God's my campaign manager.
Wow. That's